So how many of you started a firm at age 15? Anybody? Hands up if you started a firm at age 15. Okay. When, is there one? Is there one? Okay. There's one here. Okay. This is one I know. We are thrilled to have Ashish Thakkar here to join us today. I had the great privilege of meeting him in the context of the World Economic Forum, where he's a young global leader and actually came to the school for one of our programs. He and I are also both on various global futures councils of the World Economic Forum. And I have been watching Ashish's amazing work. In fact, I was also pleased to be on a panel for the FT where we awarded him one of the FT awards for boldness in business. So what makes him so awardable? What has he done in his relatively short time on this earth? So he's the executive chairman of Mara Shokani, an African e-commerce platform with a focus on B2C, founder of the Mara Group and the Mara Foundation, driven the growth of the Mara Group from a small IT business in Uganda to a globally recognized multi-sector investment group that exists today. Through its investments, the Mara Group now employs over 11,000 people across 25 African countries in sectors spanning technology, banking, real estate, and infrastructure. He serves as the chair of the United Nations Foundation Global Entrepreneurship Council and is the author of The Lion Awakes, Adventures in Africa's Economic Miracle. And what I can tell you personally, he is sparkling. He's got tons of ideas, and we probably won't hear it all today because there's so much more to come. But please join me in welcoming Ashish Thakkar to the school.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you to your amazing team, Yvonne and the team at Bank of America for making this happen, and all of you for being here. How many of you are as uneducated as I am? I think that's the real question. But the amazing experience I had was when I came to Oxford for about a week last year with the young global leaders, and I proudly claim that I'm now an Oxford alum. So let me keep that. Thank you, guys. It's an absolute pleasure being here. I'll give you a quick background, and sorry if this is repetitive to some of you. My family's been in Africa for over 120 years. My father's family moved to Uganda in 1890. Mother's family moved to Tanzania, 1920. Parents met, got married. They lived in Kenya, Rwanda. They moved back to Uganda. 1972, the Idi Amin saga took place. So my parents got kicked out, moved to England. They moved to Leicester and started from scratch. My father worked in the Ford factory. My mother worked in the Walker's Crisp factory, hence I love Walker's Crisps. They built some capital, set up a small business, built some more capital, bought a small home, but they were really missing home. They were missing Africa. So in 1993, we sold our home and business in England and moved to Rwanda. 9 months later, unfortunately, the genocide broke out. So my parents, my sister, and I were refugees during the genocide. We were at home for 9 days. We were at Hotel de Mille Collines, which is famously known as Hotel Rwanda. And, story for another day, but luckily came out okay. But unfortunately, everything we built from 72 to 93, we lost in 94. So moved back to Uganda, and I was at an age where I could understand what's happening. I could see what my parents are going through. So I felt like I wanted to and needed to do something about it. So I quit school at the age of 15, hence can just about read and write. And I took a $5,000 loan from my father and a few others and set up a little IT business, buying goods in Dubai, filling my suitcase with motherboards, hard drives, processors, Monday to Friday sell, get the cash, go back, fill my suitcase. Did that every weekend for about 4 months. And then went to my suppliers in Dubai and said, look, guys, you know me, I know you, you love me, I love you. Can I get some credit now? And they're like, but you're from Africa. I was like, yes, I'm from Africa. And they're like, yeah, forget it. It's not happening. And this was in 1996 when our brand wasn't as strong as it is today. So I got very frustrated. And as a result, cutting a long story short, but relocated to Dubai, started getting credit as a Dubai company, started extensively traveling across West Africa, East and Central Africa, Southern Africa, and started supplying IT equipment on credit. And my credit check was living with the people I was giving credit to, breaking bread with them, making them look into my eyes and say, look, promise me you're not going to default, because I don't, I really don't have the power to come after you. And nobody did default, which was really cool. 21 years later, the Mara Corporation, as it's known as now, is spread across 25 countries. About 8-9 years ago, we set up the Mara Foundation, which is focused on young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. It's all about enabling, empowering, and inspiring entrepreneurship. And we set up a program called Mara Mentor, which is an app that's available on every app store, so please do download it. It gives guidance, advice, hand-holding, support, training. We have about almost close to 1 million entrepreneurs, mostly across Africa. And what's really cool is it's an African initiative that now the United Nations Development Program is actually taking to the rest of the Arab world, which is quite nice to see. You know, when giving back, it's important to really mean it. And I think that authenticity is very, very important. We're firm believers as Mara that if you do good, you will do well. Positive energy follows positive energy. And therefore, that's always an important angle. And I encourage all of you to also look into things like the Sustainable Development Goals, which have a real purpose and a real meaning to it. And I think we can all incorporate it into everything that we're doing. Consumer spend. Consumer spend is definitely on the rise. We're seeing things reshape across the continent. The most important thing that I've seen on a consumer side on our continent is that our people do appreciate and do understand what quality is. And I think the days are gone where you can just try and build a mall out of, steel structures and try and give people that kind of stuff, because our people travel a lot. They really do understand and appreciate what quality is all about. Last week, we made a very, very exciting announcement in partnership with Google, where we announced the launch of a Mara smartphone, which is going to be available in May, so all of you better dump your apples. But it's a really, really cool, very, very high spec phone, which we're going to sell for single-digit US dollars on a monthly basis, and really, really boost that kind of thing. It's facial recognition and fingerprint reader and all that kind of stuff, which I'm still beginning to understand. But the opportunity is huge, and with things like artificial intelligence and big data and blockchain and wearable technologies, etc., the world is transforming even faster, which is why there are so many entrepreneurial opportunities out there. And a lot of people ask me, a few people have asked me today, what do you think I should focus on? What business opportunity do you think there is? And there's plenty. I think the most important thing when looking at entrepreneurship is to truly think really big, but start really small. And I think that's important. Sometimes you get carried away in that rat race, and you get carried away thinking and seeing what other people are doing and trying to top that. And when you get caught in that rat race, the problem is that even if you win, you're still a rat. So don't stay out of that thing and just stay focused. Honesty and integrity, it goes without saying, but it's absolutely critical. I'm super lucky that my spiritual leader, Morai Bapu, whose teaching is truth, love, and compassion, has kind of kept me grounded. But the honesty and integrity is critical. And success, I've said this multiple times, and I could not say it enough times, that success should only be measured and defined by the number of lives you're changing and not wealth. We get carried away. There were ridiculous titles put on me and many others across the continent about linked to wealth and linked to this, and all of that means absolutely nothing. Do you think by giving us those titles we're going to share anything? No. It's the number of lives we change is how we should be measured. And I think that's absolutely critical. But if we take a step back, all of us here today, take a step back. We are so lucky to be alive and to be African today. This is our time. People like dragging us down. I was at a conference with Fortune 100 CEOs, and I spoke about the opportunity and the big opportunity of how e-commerce is going to work, but e-commerce enablement needs to work, etc. And one of the guys came up to me right after, really enthusiastically, and I was so excited. He said, I need to speak to you. He goes, we have so many clothes that we like to give to charity. Does your e-commerce platform enable that? I looked at him like, whoa, this is how we're looked at. I mean, immediately, We're just bucketing. I know I dress badly, but, like, there's a limit. But I mean, my point is, people are always going to try and drag us down and try and bucket us in that way. And, you all get tired of it, but we, as fellow Africans, make this mistake a lot of times as well, that we're not a country, we're a continent. We do make this mistake. I've faced this so many times across our continent, it frustrates me. We're a continent, not a country. We're physically larger than the US, North America, Western Europe, India, and China put together. Throw in New Zealand as well. We are huge as a continent, and we are transforming. Look at what happened in Kenya. A sitting, powerful president agreed to a nullified election and went back to the campaign polls. And just yesterday or day before yesterday, the opposition leader and the president met. Zimbabwe, a peaceful transition, finally. Angola, amazing transition taking place, and a true transition, not for the sake of it. Ghana and Nigeria, I mean, I used to laugh that, Nigeria had peaceful, free, and fair democratic elections, and guess what? The world doesn't know, and do you know why? Because they were peaceful, free, and fair. People don't talk about this kind of stuff. South Africa, etc. I can go on, and my country, which is Rwanda. We're the 7th safest country in the world. We got ranked the 7th safest country in the world. And what do people say? Whenever I kind of have this argument, people are like, but, Rwanda is a small country, so it's easy to kind of take into that position. That's absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Burundi is a small country. Why isn't that transformed in the same way? And we started at the same stage in 1994. So it's all about leadership, and we must celebrate that kind of leadership that we have. So, I mean, I want to stop, but one more thing is just, it frustrates you, and you kind of question it sometimes, that Kenya fought terrorism, sent, troops to Somalia, etc. As a result, one of the shopping malls got attacked. You all read about that. And immediately, all the Western countries put a travel ban, travel alert, don't go, very dangerous, shouldn't go there. We all remember that. France had a similar issue, and the entire world flew down there and walked on the streets and stood in solidarity. Why? Are lives valued according to the GDPs of our countries? So, my people, the summary is, Africa is now. It's all about trade, it's not about aid, and we all know that. We've all been singing that. But it's time we collectively change our narrative. It's very, very important we change our narrative. And this is why I think, when it comes to the topic of redefining the consumer, I think, Yvonne, you said it very well earlier as well, and I think it's almost like we need to allow and enable our consumers to, how do we enable them to self-define who our consumers are? And I think we are who we are, which is the future. And it's in our hands. And, we're only answerable to ourselves, only to ourselves. We'll be judged constantly, but we're only answerable to ourselves. So, no pressure, but the future is really in your hands, and we've got to take this mantle, and we've got to take it to the next level. We shouldn't wait for a seat at the table, we should take a seat at the table. And it's being offered to us. Our country's mindsets have really, really evolved, and I've seen this firsthand. And last thing, I was in the US and someone said to me, so, when you think about Africa, do you think about it as a glass half full or a glass half empty? So I was like, yeah. And I was quite tired. I'd come off a long flight. So I was like, all right, look. I was like, let's be honest. I mean, if I tell you glass half full, are you going to help me fill it up? If I tell you glass half empty, you're going to help knock it down? But if you want a straight answer, we're half full, we're going to be full, but we're going to overflow it. This is our time. Thank you so much. God bless. Thank you.
Future is in your hands, and so is the microphone. Who'd like to go first? Don't tell me you're shy now. Yes. Give it a pitch. There we go.
Hello. Yves Messi. I'm an executive education student here, and I'm a blockchain lecturer at the Sauder Business School in Vancouver, Canada. You mentioned artificial intelligence, and I got very excited. So AI and Africa, what's the deal?
Do you want me to answer it?
Yep.
Great question. I mean, we're very, very excited about AI in Africa because the fact that we've got so much, when you think about mobile phone penetration on our continent, right? 90% mobile phone penetration, but the fact that smartphone penetration, today we have roughly 200 million smartphones on the continent. We're going to have about 700 million smartphones on our continent in the next few years. Most of them are going to be Mara phones. No. but it just shows you the amount of data that's going to come out of that and the amount of AI you can plug in and actually impact lives in so many different ways, from financial services to commerce enablement to healthcare to education. So we're working on an initiative which is deeply involving AI in one of our projects as well. So I think in the next year or so, we'll see a lot more of it.
Great. If you can pitch that box over here. And then after you're done, if you could just pass it down to the one in front of you.
Hi. I'd like to ask a question around, in the naivety of youth, we're very optimistic and thinking, we can change the world and things like that. But there's the practical reality on the ground, things you've learned over your career in Africa doing business. What are 2 or 3 lessons that you wish you knew at 25, 20 years old that you've learned throughout your career that we should take on board, that this is the reality we're going to face and these are the obstacles we need to overcome?
That's a very, very, very good question. Look, I think the biggest one is the bureaucracy, right? And bureaucracy does exist. It absolutely does. And particularly, one thing that's talked about a lot, which is corruption. And you face that. And the fact that we're operating across 25 countries and everything we've done, always done over the last 21 years is 100% above board. So do we get frustrated? Of course. But the thing that people forget and don't talk enough about is that there are only going to be takers if there are givers, right? So I think it's a matter of working with the right principles and standards. And I'll give you a very, very quick example. But in one particular country, I won't mention the name, we were working on a project, and it was a very large project which government got involved in, and we won it. So one of the ministers called me and said he wants to take me for lunch. So I was over the moon, and I went for lunch, and as soon as we sat down, he said, "I'm not here to eat." I said, "Okay." He's like, "I want $5 million in 7 days, or I'll finish you." So it was the first time I faced something like that, directly in that way. I was like, I was quite shaken. And I said, "All right, look, with all due respect, Honorable Minister, I'll go with the second option." So he stood up, his chair fell on the ground, he started walking out, and I said, one second. So he turned around, he smirked a little bit. He said, "Have you changed your mind?" I said, "No, just quick question, because you called me for lunch, if I still eat, will you still pay?" But I learned a new word. But what did we do about it? I immediately went, and my lawyers advised against it, the team advised against it, but I put a full-page ad in the newspaper, full page, and I put bullet points of exactly what happened. Now, I exaggerated it. I said he threatened my life. He didn't. But it just fit well. And I put a quarter of the page, I wrote to the president in that advert saying, if this is the way you're going to run your country, I'm out. And that minister got suspended and fired. A few years later, he met me on a flight. He said to me, I always knew you were the right person for that project, And I told him, I was like, I couldn't have done it without your support. And, So I think the summary is, stick to your principles. And don't be scared. Don't be scared of sticking to your principles. Because just because one individual is like that doesn't mean the entire system's like that. And it is a two-way street. This is something that we don't talk about enough. We always say we're all pressured with this, and then people facilitate. How the hell do you expect that we fix that if we're going to start succumbing to that pressure? No, we should not. So I think principles.
And we're all waiting for Ashish, the movie. I think you have the box next, right in front.
Hello, my name is Saba, and I'm originally from Eritrea. So for thousands and thousands of years, like Africa and African people always had this very bad negative stereotype. Even in your speech, even up until now, you said that you faced that kind of negative stereotype. And in my sense, because in recent years, we all became, I feel like, more proud because of our heritage, like movies like Black Panther coming out, and more sense and more proudness. My question to you is, in what sense do you think that your African heritage helped you in becoming an entrepreneur? Like, in what way? Because you do say Africans are the future, so that's my question.
Thank you. I mean, the fact that our family went through what it went through twice, and we're still on the continent extremely passionate about it. When I grew up, and even though I was born here but raised in East Africa, my parents would speak in Swahili and Luganda constantly around me, and all I'd hear about is them reminiscing about their days. The culture that we have on our continent is really, really unique. It is very unique. People come to our country. I mean, my perfect example is we can do this. Drive on the street here and start waving at someone. And you won't see all the fingers come up. But you do it you do it in quite a few of our countries, and people wave back with two hands. That's just a live test that anyone can do. And that just shows you that warmth and the culture that our continent has. It is very, very unique. And look, I think, people say I'm a bit too optimistic, but I'm not. I'm a realist. I'm seeing this. I've been seeing this 21 years, 15, 20 days a month I spend on the continent for the last 21 years. And across, I don't go to North Africa much, but Sub-Saharan Africa. And it is truly, truly transforming. And hence my point on the earlier question of, it's all about principle. Our continent is transforming. And it's just these last 6 months, we've seen this. We've seen how much political shift has taken place. It's amazing. It's annoying that it's not talked about or celebrated enough, but it's happening. And that's the most important thing.
Okay. Let's see. How about, can you pitch it to the woman over there on the aisle? The far side of the aisle.
Let me.
Excellent. Okay.
I should thank my netball teacher for that. Ashish, just what you've just said now made me reflect to what Colin was speaking about earlier. And he used words that sounded like the stream of African migrants coming to Europe, you ain't seen nothing yet. And yet we're sitting here and you're very positive, and he was also very positive. So I'm trying to figure out in my head, is it a possibility that perhaps us sitting here see the opportunities, we see what's actually possible, and we have the means to plug into established business so that we can start businesses that make sense? But are there perhaps gaps in terms of accessing those people that may be making their way up to Libya to cross the Mediterranean, hoping and thinking that Europe is the answer? And if that is the case, how do we turn the tide, in your view?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I think one thing we can't forget is that we are a huge continent. We're a very large continent. And we're under transformation. We're not there yet. So when you think about youth unemployment, unemployment is a global issue. But youth unemployment is a very African issue because we've got such a young demographic. But the fact is that, 10 years ago, our governments weren't addressing it. The answer to unemployment was, foreign direct investment. That doesn't work anymore. And they've all realized that, but that doesn't work anymore for several reasons. Number one, automation plays such a massive role that it's not going to create the level of jobs you think it will. So it's all about how do we empower our youth, our women, to actually make that difference. And that kind of falls in, we launched something called the AJT Global Entrepreneurship Index, which kind of measures what public policies need to be put into place in order for entrepreneurs to succeed. We talk about innovation, and innovation is absolutely critical, and homegrown innovation is so critical. But we don't even have IP laws in a lot of our countries, right? So the basics need to be put into place, which is happening now. Access to finance. Access to finance is absolutely crucial. I mean, the banking model has been traditionally taking customers' deposits, putting it into government treasury, making 1,000, 1,200 basis point spreads, and not lending to consumers, not lending to businesses, right? So, you know, that kind of stuff is slowly transitioning. So I think the only way we can fix that, in my opinion, and I haven't given it that much thought, but my view is that we need to make a difference on the ground and quickly. And the minute we start doing that, and the minute it starts really trickling down into the economy, it will stop that. But I think we can't just depend on our governments to do it. The private sector and we as individuals all have a collective responsibility. These are our people too, and that's why businesses need to start working in a very, very different mindset as well. Hence, it's not a marketing thing, but doing good and doing well. How do we ensure that our businesses are genuinely making a positive social impact on our people and our countries, while at the same time making great profits? So that balance is very, very critical.
Great. Somewhere near the back. How about this woman near the aisle, please? Yep, you.
Okay. So a unifying theme that we've had throughout the series of talks that we've had so far is the youth population in Africa. And I'm under the impression that we're on the cusp of a digital revolution. Some people would say that we're experiencing it now. I think, do you think, I don't know how to word it, but do you think there's an opportunity to introduce a different education system in Africa, one that is more, that places emphasis on creativity, vocational skills, entrepreneurship, and you know, the ability to collaborate, and do you think that this would be welcomed in Africa as opposed to the traditional education system that we have? So something that would promote entrepreneurship and innovation among Africa's youth population.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's a very good point. To answer your first point, I mean, we are on the cusp of, and we are experiencing it at the same time. I think the digital revolution is happening, but I still think it's the tip of the iceberg. I think it's going to be absolutely transformative going forward. But your point around education and can that be transformed? Absolutely, and it needs to, right? When we started Mara Mentor, it's more of an informal education tool, because if you think about our youth, when we think about empowering them and you know, giving them the necessary skills to start businesses, but the reality is that who do they turn to for advice when they want business advice? Their parents are either civil servants or farmers. So who do they go to? They can't just walk up to you on the street and nudge your shoulder and ask you a question. And hence we came up with the entire concept of informal education, which is in form of mentorship. I think that's applicable everywhere though, right? And the practical experience and know-how that you get from entrepreneurs and from like-minded individuals is very, very different than you're going to get in a traditional system. I mean, what Peter and his team have done with Oxford Foundry, for example, is absolutely phenomenal, right? So what that will bring and do will be very different, and it'll be amazing. And in that sense, on our continent, there's a huge opportunity. And hence, just visualize 60, 70% or 80% of our continent having smartphones in their hands. It's going to change the way our people live. It's going to change everything. And data will hopefully be cheaper and faster. So it's truly going to transform. And education is going to be one of those sectors that does need to be and will be disrupted in the right way.
Great. How about this gentleman, about 5 in? Yep, just pitch it over there.
Me?
Yeah. You caught it? It's yours.
Hey. Hi, Ashish. Just a quick question. You had mentioned you were talking about how not all the time, right, you need to depend on your governments. Sometimes you have to get on the ground and do it yourself. But we all know on the African continent, you know, the government has a strong hand. The government has a strong hand, you know, and sometimes you just have to work with them. They're the ones setting the laws, they're the ones setting everything, right? So on some level, I wanted to ask, in your experience, how do you move forward? Do you just get to a point where it's happening, you wait till it happens, wait 10 years, or do you push your government? You know, you have to partner with them. How do you nudge? Do you push? Do you pull? Or do you just wait for them to come around?
No, good point. I'm glad you've asked this, actually, because I'm not saying we should bypass government. I think you've raised a very important point. We have to work with governments. But my point was, we should not just depend on governments to solve all the issues or do all the things or come up with all the concepts and ideas and policies. Our governments have become a lot more receptive to new concepts, new ideas, new strategies. They genuinely have, and I've seen this constantly. You know, we've talked about it so many times today. M-Pesa has been brought up quite a few times, and it's truly transformed financial inclusion in Kenya. We've all seen that. But think about the fact that the central bank actually let it happen. They enabled it, right? They could have blocked that, and it was blocked. It has been blocked in so many different countries. It still is in some countries, right? But Kenya actually let it happen. The government supported it. And, you know, was it used for the wrong things initially? I'm sure it was. But then they kept on tightening it without actually affecting the user experience, without affecting the financial inclusion. So I think the point comes where we need to be innovative, we need to be aggressive, we need to drive things. But sensitizing government should be done in a way where if it's not happening just at one door, at one office, we can't give up. We've got to constantly knock on several. We shouldn't stop in one place. In larger countries of ours, you know, it's state versus federal and all of that kind of stuff. But I mean, there are ways to make it happen. And I think all of our countries are realizing now, we're very patriotic as a continent. We're all noticed that, right? Everybody sings the Africa story. Everybody then sings the regional story. Like East Africa is pretty stuck together and really sings the East Africa story. And then within the East Africa story, everyone's like, but we are the financial hub, right? And I think the advantage in that is that we can play one against the other to really make things happen. And some countries will move faster than others. And when they do, and you have one case study, the other one will move quicker, and it's going to happen that way. And that's why we should think broader than just our country. I think, you know, open borders and trade being free-flowing and all of that does need to happen, should happen. Not because I'm East African, but really the East African community has been phenomenal because it's smaller. And, you know, one country, Tanzania, was slowing it down and they pushed it aside and kept on going. They really did. They really did. It was Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda. The minute Tanzania started slowing it down, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda said, let them figure themselves out. The three of us go. And they drove it, right? So leadership does that. So I think when some countries are not as receptive, go to the next one. And there's plenty of opportunities in our continent. And we're seeing it all the time. We're in 25 countries. My relationships aren't, you know, we've got good relationships, and I feel very comfortable in 15, 16 of those. I'm still learning the rest, and you've got to relearn and unlearn and all sorts of stuff that goes on, and that's a constant process. But that's the beauty. And I'm seeing more and more that things happen much quicker, things happen. And yeah, the argument is, yes, because, you know, we've got a brand and track record, so people trust us more and all of that. But, you know, I think generally across the board, we're seeing it in so many different cases that that's happening.
Great. Let's say, the orange mic, could you throw it to the woman across in red?
In red.
There you go.
Hi, I just want to ask a personal question. You know, there's a thing about being a startup and an entrepreneur. Do you still have a life? Like, like how balanced? Because we all want to be one, we all want to be entrepreneurs, but I really want to know.
Life? What's a life? No, I advocate on this really well, that it's all about work-life balance, and I'm terrible at it. I think, when you are a startup, I think you're going to be focused, very, very focused, and you've got to be. People say to me or say to others that, you should work smart and not work hard. That's absolute nonsense, right? I mean, you have to work smart and you have to work hard. There's no substitute to that. I'm very, very lucky that my parents, my sisters, my niece and nephew, and the very, very supportive ecosystem around me. I do take out time for my spiritual leader and for my family. But you've got to be 24/7. You have to be 24/7. Right after this speech, I run to the airport to fly, and we've got meetings all day tomorrow. And it's a constant process, but it doesn't feel like a chore, or it doesn't feel tiring at all if you love what you do. And I think that's the most important thing, that it doesn't, that feels like it is your life, but again, that's really bad to say. Ariana Huffington has set up something called Thrive, which is really, really cool, and we're going to be putting it on Mara phones as well. So you should all get Thrive and try and use it, but work really hard as well.
Okay, how about over here? Can you raise your hand? And this one here. Yep, there you go. Thank you.
So my question is, as a diaspora and someone who, like most people here, have African heritage, but we're raised in the West, what's the best thing that we can do to go back and help, but without taking opportunities from those who stayed behind and didn't get the wealth of opportunities that we've had, and a way to empower them and push them forward as well without having, I guess, a superiority complex or inferiority complex?
That's a very, very good question and a very thoughtful one. I think the simplest answer is the expertise and knowledge and understanding that you have, having lived in a developed market and seen and got the exposure you've got, versus a counterpart who's going to be in country, who has the experience and understanding of the local market and living that every day. The best and easiest thing to do is to partner, right? And putting those two strengths together becomes a very unique combination. And I don't think by you partnering with them that you'll be taking it away from anyone else. You're bringing something unique to the table. And for you to genuinely get that kind of knowledge and experience and understanding that they have of the local market will take you a very long time. So partnerships and collaboration, I think, is a really good way to do it.
Okay. I think you actually have a mic in front of you.
Hi, Ashish. My name is Amayo. So my question is, based on your speech, I got a lot about, from you, optimism and empathy. And not empathy in a way that, a foreigner would have for somebody who is like a local. It's like you've been through it, you know what the struggle is, and you're going through it with the people, right? So my question is, has your optimism ever blinded you? And have your optimism and your empathy ever been taken for granted?
That's a really, really good question. Amayo, my optimism has blinded me plenty of times. I always promise myself that I'm not going to go all in again, and I always do. It's the bug of an entrepreneur, I suppose. But it does blind you to an extent. But I think, kind of taking it on a bit of a spiritual level, which is relevant in the entrepreneurial world, is that you got to have that faith as well, though, right? Will our markets turn again? Will they bounce back? Will they come back? And the answer is yes. So do you give up and unplug? No. And in entrepreneurship, the most important thing to realize, it is a journey. It's not a destination. You're going to get knocked down so many times. You just got to keep on getting up, dusting yourself off, and getting back to it. So I think on that one, absolutely. Has the empathy side been taken advantage of? To an extent, and especially in the earlier days and stuff, but that should never, ever stop you giving back or making a difference, because I think my belief is what goes round comes round, and I think if somebody deserves something, they'll get it one way or the other. So you got to kind of just keep on making it happen. But I think the two most important things is remain optimistic. It really is our time. If you think about everything we've seen everywhere else, It really, really is our time as Africa. And I think the difference between us and the India story and the China story is that they are one country. These are one country stories that really have become huge. And we will be, I'm confident, we will be that next big story, all right, with real statistics, not just the buzz, but real statistics, which we don't have yet. We will have. When you think about our GDP, when you think about our GDP growth versus India, versus China, we've got a long way to go, but we will get there. We will absolutely get there. But I think the difference is that every country is so unique and different. And that's what we as African entrepreneurs also make that mistake. Kenyan business is trying to go to Uganda. Nigerian business is trying to go to Ghana. We've seen it constantly where if you use that copy and paste model, it just does not work. So being truly local. So remain optimistic.
And I think that is a great way to bring this day to a close.